Steven interviewed a furry in costume, and this really demonstrates that Crowder and Turning Point USA are nothing more than propagandists. Was this guy here to talk about Snap? No, he was there because the president of the University of Oklahoma's Turning Point USA chapter asked him to be there and asked him to wear his costume and told him he could talk about furry stuff and not Snap. He is a plant, which is likely nothing new for a Turning Point USA event.
I mean, I don't know much about this topic, so I would not, I prefer not to give any comment. At least when they invited me here, they said it was mostly going to be about like the
okay, so Twister.
I only wore it here today because I was asked by the president to bring it.
Okay.
They reached out to me a few days ago asking if I was interested in coming down, and I was very hesitant.
The president of what?
Turning Point USA's OU chapter.
Oh, okay, so they asked you to.
Yeah.
So are you involved with them?
No.
No.
And boy, did this blow up in their faces. This dude's name is Twistle, and his interests are geology and meteorology. So his name is a combination of Twister and Crystal. And that's nerd shit. No offense, Twistle, I'm a nerd myself. And why is Twistle there if it's not to talk about Snap? It's because the people at Turning Point assumed, much like Steven assumes, that being a furry is predominantly a sexual activity. So they thought Steven, with his boilerplate arsenal against furries, would be able to chew this guy up and make some great shorts for the internet. But they fucked up because Twistle isn't a furry for sexual reasons at all. So he won't be taking the furry sex is normal stance that Steven loves to attack. In fact, he gives Steven basically nothing to work with. Early in the conversation, Twistle says he doesn't take part in the sexual aspect of the community.
Are you one of these people you've discussed, or what percentage of your community would you say also have some type of sexual proclivity or it being included in their identity as a furry?
I can't say any number because
Okay.
I honestly don't know, but I do know people that do have that side.
Yeah.
For me, I choose to stay away from it for the most part in terms of art, the costume.
But Steven really wants this guy to be some kind of pervert.
Well, wait, for the most part. So that means you probably experimented a little bit with some of the sex stuff.
I have friends that are into that side, and I pretty much stay away from it.
What is, you keep saying pretty much. You have like an experience early on in college or something like that?
No.
Again, no one will know.
I've never had any kind of experiences with the costume, and
Okay.
I do not want to.
You don't want
Partly
to?
because this is extremely expensive. Don't want to get it dirty.
Okay. It is a messy endeavor.
So I definitely stay away from not safe for work side.
Steven presses on. He tries to make the point that because the LGBTQ community are intertwined with the furry community, then being a furry is an outward display of sexuality, which many people think is degenerate behavior.
Let me ask you, what type of intersect do you think there's with like LGBTQ? Because a lot of people think, it's now just a modern expression of gender. And I will tell you this, a lot of people view it as degeneracy when it's an expression of gender or sexuality, because those things should be kept in private.
There is a significant proportion of the fandom that is LGBTQ. I mean, what they do is not my business, so can't really comment too much on that.
Yeah, but what if the furry community is seen as sort of a quasi-ambassadorship of LGBTQ, because it's all about breaking down societal norms, gender norms, healthy approach to human interaction. And I'm going to tell you, I don't love it. I think we want to do a costume party, but I think walking around in society where people have to adapt to it is uncomfortable, and I do think it's pretty abnormal.
Well, let me say this.
Do you understand that, though? Yeah.
Furries generally do not just walk around this in their everyday life.
Isn't it incumbent upon you to say, no, that's kind of degenerate to try and thrust a sexual preference like this into the public spotlight?
I mean, I'll say what most cases of that happening are in a private setting. Whatever they do is not my business, and so I would just leave it to them to do whatever.
These clips demonstrate who's really obsessed with the sexual side of furries. It's guys like Steven who go looking for this kind of thing, and then they bemoan that the LGBTQ and furry people are trying to corrupt society. Crusaders like Steven are the ones who scour social media accounts and go to parades and conventions looking for these people so they can be outraged. In other words, Steven Crowder starts thinking about exotic and likely very hardcore sexual things when he sees a person in an animal costume.
Well, no,
sex stuff.
Then Steven says it's associated with the destruction of heteronormative behavior.
Right, but it's associated with you know this, right? I don't want to talk in circles on it. The destruction of heteronormative sexual behavior.
Imagine what sort of perversions are running through Steven's mind as he sits across from this non-sexual crystals and weather enthusiast.
Well,
Some of the
no,
sex
like
stuff.
Steven then explains how these images that won't go away got into his head. He says he accidentally took his kids to a cosplay convention and he saw some sexy outfits and he freaked out.
I ended up accidentally at WeebCon. Does that ring a bell? You know what that is?
I do not.
Oh my gosh. I was going to an Easter thing at Gaylord Hotel, and it wasn't Easter, it was WeebCon, and by the third S&M Spider-Man / Furry, I was like, I hit the fire exit with my kids.
Here's some pictures of WeebCon and it looks pretty tame to me. Then he says every time he goes on X, he sees some sexual furry content.
But they see the freaky stuff, right? Why do you think that's always on public display? Why do you think if I go on X or Instagram, there's always some weird quasi-sexual energy with the furry community? And how accepting do you think that Americans should be of that?
I went on X and I had to look hard for any sexual furry content, but I guess my algorithm is tuned differently than Steven's. Steven again tries to make the point that when people see furries, they think of sex.
What I would say is, if something like that is happening out in public, it's more likely to make the news. For example, like I'll tell you.
Well, no. But if they do it in private, but then they're dressed as a furry in public, people are going, oh, well, that's one of those people because they've made their identity being a furry, and that also is part and parcel of their sexual identity.
Yeah,
right?
I would say that's where that misconception of everybody does it because it's a sexual thing comes from.
Anyway, Twistle sets him straight again, and then he tells him about a cool thing he did as a furry.
Like, for example, whenever I was at a convention in Dallas, I did a presentation on how to find your own crystals. I had about 80 or so people show up. I had about 100 crystals on display. I gave away half of them. Everybody left home with one. And it was strictly educational, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
I had a really awesome time. People learned about rocks. I got to talk about what I was passionate about for an entire hour to a group of people that had no idea what that was beforehand.
That's right. Not only did Twistle say that he only wears his costume on occasion, and that a lot of the conversation during those meetups is about how neato the costumes are, he also says that one of the coolest things he's done as a furry is giving a presentation about crystals. It's beautiful. Twistle ends the conversation by turning the knife into Steven's guts. And I fucking love this part. Twistle tells Steven that most furry conventions raise money for charity, and that he was personally a part of one that raised over $100,000 for a shelter for senior dogs. Look at how it pains Steven to hear that furries are doing something undeniably excellent for the community.
Furry conventions in general are actually one of the best things for local charities. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but usually every convention will be raising money for some kind of charity. For example, one convention I attended in Pittsburgh of 2024 actually raised about $100,000.
That's great.
Over that for a local, I believe it was a shelter for senior dogs.
Okay.
And every year they do different ones, do different charities usually within the area.
Cool.
These things raise tens of thousands of dollars.
All right.
That's it. If you like that, here's something similar. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you're feeling generous, become a patron and a globalist for life. My name is Greb Kared, your ally in the fight against disinformation.